Third and final presentation from the end use today. Chris is Commercial Director of Plantforce. You get to about unlocking a real world value from clean power and construction. He comes from Bath, so he's got a full set of vocabulary.
Thank you. So just while we set that up, I thought I'd make a start. Pretty tough to follow, Lewis, actually. Thank you for that. You've set me up well with a degree of positivity. But yeah, just firstly to thank Commission Analytics. This is my second visit to conference. I'm very pleased and slightly surprised to be invited back. So I think you obviously liked my dose of realism. Apologies if my voice goes a little bit. I think I enjoyed the German beer a little bit too much last night. Show of hands, who attended conference last year in Munich? Just so I've got a rough idea. It's about half the room. Okay. Well, what I'm effectively been asked to do is to touch back on the story that I introduced 12 months ago. So for those who didn't attend, I'll circle back to make sure that I explain exactly what the project was so that you can understand some of the outcomes. So first, a bit of an apology. I've been sat here for the last couple of days and I've been overawed again with regards to the technical knowledge in the room. I feel a little bit intimidated as I'm more of a commercial person looking at the business numbers than I am potentially the CO2 and the technology. So yeah, it's been really, really interesting. Hopefully you'll get from me a little bit more of the real world example about how we deploy that technology in a real workspace in the UK. So I feel I need to justify why you're about to give me sort of 19 minutes of your time. So a little bit of a potted history from myself. I've spent the last 20 years, yes, I appreciate you wouldn't know it from looking at me, working in the UK major infrastructure sector. So primarily that's been through looking at major highways jobs, utilities jobs across the UK. I've worked for both the sales side, so on a plant hire perspective, but also from a procurement perspective. I've worked with Balfour Beatty and Skanska, and my experiences culminated with procuring the major earthworks and self-drive plant on a scheme called the A14, which was £1.5 billion worth of procurement. So that kind of scales where I've come from. I've spent the latter part of my career building or scaling plant hire organisations. So two of the largest organisations in the UK who are responsible for a lion's share of the UK plant hire market. I was fortunate enough to attend a private equity dinner the other day, and an analyst had the unfortunate task of trying to summarise my experience, and I've stolen her stats. She described me having either bought, sold or raised about £2.6 billion worth of finance directly in the UK in the last 20 years. So quite a significant chunk of finance. I'm trying to explain that to you because I want you to understand how the UK market is built up. Who is making decisions? Who is buying the technology that all of you have so eloquently discussed in the room? I think that's quite important. So Plantforce. Plantforce are considered one of the big three UK plant hires in the UK. Our specialism is in operated plant. That's putting the human being with the operator. We work across principally tier 1 organisations. 75% of my spend is with 26 customers. So we focus on the larger end of UK construction. My net book valuation is about 135 million pounds. So at any one point in time, I've got assets under management of about 135 million quid. In terms of my spend, I'm spending roughly 30 to 35 million pounds a year on CapEx. During the peak summer months, I'm spending in excess of £1 million a week. That's the sort of scale that the bigger end of the UK plant hire market is dealing with. So really, again, my value to you, okay? I'm your customer. I'm the person who's managing the assets that ultimately all of your technology is going into. But that responsibility doesn't really end there. So my role as CCO of Plantforce is very much about looking at where our business goes next. I'm trying to align our business strategy, our corporate objectives, to make sure that they're all pointing in the same sort of direction. That means I'm responsible for planning the future, I'm planning new technology, and I'm planning how to invest in our people. The key step, though, that isn't getting discussed often enough, I appreciate Marcus and Lewis did at the end there, is I'm also managing that narrative with our investors. With the exception of a couple of organisations in the UK, we're all publicly funded. So the fact that we're telling a good story in this room about sustainability and future technologies, that's great. But some of the key audience members that are missing are where are the banks, where are the private equity funds, and ultimately where are the clients who are making those decisions. So my role is very much translating this narrative and taking it to those guys so that they can be invested on that journey as well. The other big aspect of my role is trying to decipher what that sustainability journey actually means. I really resonated with you, Marcus, in terms of what you have gone through with regards to your research and how you've communicated that within the wider market. The next piece of the jigsaw is how I make that work commercially. Because we can all have fantastic ideas, spreadsheets and research, but if we can't scale that commercially into a business, it's just going to stay on the page. And I've certainly noticed that across my career. Okay, so in terms of this session, I'm going to introduce to you in a moment a project that we were participants in called Element 1. But I thought, because bearing in mind you guys have shared a lot of graphs and data with me, I thought I'd have a go at putting one up myself just to give you a little bit more context. I spent my Monday at the privilege of my financiers in London. I had 3 bank meetings where I spent much of the day convincing them of my my business strategy over the next 2 to 3 years. This was one of the slides that I used as part of that pack, which explains the UK plant hire sector. What we're looking at here on the left-hand side is the total plant hire sector that we recognise in the UK, and I've extrapolated out the orange sector, which is the bit that I'm interested in. Now, if any of you have spent time with banks, you'll probably appreciate that everyone likes a graph that goes up. So I focus on putting as many of those in my packs as possible. The observant of you, though, will look at the right-hand side and go, well, whilst those numbers represent quite big totals, the increase is quite static. 5% CAGR is pretty low. Realistically, the value of the plant hire market that I represent feels static. Inflation is basically that 5%. The cost of goods over the next 5 years is what's going to represent the growth. We're in this phase at the bottom end of the graph, which is 24-25. Now, £1.5 billion worth of capex investment across the UK, again, feels quite big. But what's made up in that market is predominantly the 3 or 4 largest hirers, of which Plantforce is one, and all the rest. The UK market is incredibly fragmented. Lewis did a really good job of explaining what his membership looks like. There are thousands of members. There are a huge number of players that aren't in this room today. They don't know how to compute the decarbonisation journey that their business is going to go through, let alone their investment strategy over the next 3 to 5 years. What I predict happening, and what's already evident in the UK, is a consolidation of that market space. There's a large number of players that are dropping out. There's loads of factors that are influencing that, but notably the fact that understanding this journey that our customers are going on is getting harder. Whilst pairing that with the external environmental factors of interest rates going up, we've got some depressed clients out there that aren't investing. A lot of the privately financed construction jobs in the UK are drying up. We call it getting pushed right, so they're going back to the planning stage, and that's slowing down the opportunity for a lot of the UK hire market to grow or even sustain themselves. I predict over the next few years we're going to see an actual decrease in the population of fleets. Now, you could argue that's a bit of a positive. I think we're going to get a bit more efficient, a bit more effective at how we put those machines to work. We're going to use a lot of the technologies that have been explained in the sessions over the last couple of days to actually utilise those machines a bit more. I see age profiles increasing. Now, these are a couple of big points that I really want you guys to take home, because you're all talking about new products to market, or many of you are. I think plant hirers are going to be forced to run their machines longer. Interest rates are really hurting companies like myself. My interest charges this year will be £8.5 million. I will not make £8.5 million in profit. 5 years ago, I was paying 0.5%. That's what the entire industry is having to contend with. So when you are pitching your new ideas, your innovations, your trials, you've got to convince people like me that I'm going to use a limited proportion of my research budget or my innovation budget on your scheme. That's proving difficult. There's other things that are affecting the market as well, which is a growing acceptance of re-engineering or refresh. So products that have already had one rental life are going back into dealers or service facilities to be rebuilt, stripped down and rebuilt. It's quite an exciting prospect. So that's taking an asset that we might have flipped on 5 years and running it for potentially 10. Again, where are the opportunities then to make that a more effective, more efficient asset? And finally, and this is pretty obvious, it's the foreign trade challenges that we've got. All of my fleet, when it gets flipped, tends to leave the UK. But it's a bit difficult. We've got Donald Trump, we've got the fact that the UK market, or the UK is out of Europe, we've got other markets that are less receptive to UK second-hand plant. So there's a lot of challenges which are suggesting that the population of UK plant is going to stay static or indeed decline. So that's my backdrop. I wanted to give you that picture because I want you to understand why we got involved in the Element 1 project, what our motivations were, and what we might be looking to do going forwards. So I wanted to come up with a couple of bold statements in terms of where I sit on some of the alternative fuel space. I'm not going to contradict anything that Lewis said. All of the challenges he raised are real and things that I live with. But I've got a customer base that are challenging me to find out what are we doing to decarbonise their operations. My issue has been that a number of the OEMs have either been slow or reluctant to come to market with solutions. Lots of ideas of what might be happening, what is in development. Marcus, I refer to some of your research about when you sat down with all of the OEMs in Germany and asked them what their decarbonisation journey is. We've done exactly the same in the UK, but what I tended to find it was going to be 2027, 2028, 2029 when some of these technologies were coming to market, and that's before we discussed the infrastructure. We felt under pressure to do something. So we wanted to challenge the market to see what the opportunities were. So a little bit more information for you. So that 6 billion number isn't designed to contradict what I said before, and that's the entire UK plant hire market. We've got 25 to 30,000 large machines. Large, by my definition, is 8 ton plus operating in the UK. Lewis already highlighted that the vast majority of that plant is owned by plant hire companies. We don't pay for fuel. When our machines go to work, that is the one aspect of the hire that is the customer's responsibility, which challenges that TCO. And we're running those fleets longer. So how are we going to impact customers that have got objectives in 2028, 2029? And this is the big one. So that second point there. My clients are demanding solutions from companies like Plantforce. They don't want to own the assets themselves. The barriers to purchasing machinery are high. The cost of servicing is very high, the cost of the manpower to run these machines around, let alone the actual operation. So they're relying on the hire companies to provide them with a solution. I believe that particularly in the UK, we're going to need solutions that not only offer us new technology to the market, but give us the opportunity to retrofit onto existing fleets. I think that's going to help de-risk some of the application that we've got. We also need a far better certainty of supply. That's both logistics, personnel, training, and the fuels themselves. And we need a much better understanding of the total cost of ownership. These are things that you've all heard before. So if I reintroduce Element 1. So we formed a consortium alongside Skanska, BAM, a member of the audience here today, Flannery Plant Hire, Ulemco, Reynolds, and BRE as an advisor, all funded by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. Our objective was to provide an end-to-end solution for the collection, distribution, storage, and use of hydrogen on site. Goes without saying, the bit that we were responsible for was the hydrogen machine. To be clear, we produced a machine, or we modified a machine that could burn hydrogen in the existing ICE engine. We provided 2 machines. There were another 2 machines on project. One of those machines was using a 30% blend and the second a 50% blend of hydrogen to fuel mix. This was designed deliberately to take an existing machine from fleet, run a conversion process, and offset, or rather reduce, the overall diesel consumption on site. The other aspects of the project that were really interesting were the last mile delivery solution. My machines typically work in remote locations. They are excavators. The UK market is predominantly an excavator-led market. These machines do not and will not track back to any sort of bowser. The fuel comes to them. So one of the challenges we've got is making sure that we have a drop-in fuel replacement. So that last mile solution was very important. It did turn out to be quite expensive. The site coincidentally also used a hydrogen power unit which powered cabins on site. So it had another aspect to it. Just for clarity, there were two different types, makes and models of machinery. We used Kobelco machines. Our competitor used a pair of Cat machines. We converted 20-tonners. I think this point was made yesterday that the 20-ton market in the UK is the workhorse. What's interesting about that particular asset is that it does multiple jobs. It can be used on stockpiles. It's been used in heavy earthworks, but it's also used in far lighter applications. So it's got a full spread of use cases. And my objective was, and please don't take offense to this, rather than to have a very scientific approach, I wanted a practical output. I wanted to know exactly what it was going to cost. Those of you are familiar, I use the Top Gear rules as an example. I wanted to see exactly how much diesel it offset, do a full-to-full test and see how much fuel it was using at the end of the working day to be as practical as possible. So, I think I've already covered some of this. That's why we use the Kobelco. The bit that you actually want to hear me talk about. So what actually happened? At peak, we were able to displace up to 30% of fuel in the Kobelco. Generally speaking, there was a 20% reduction in diesel by infusing the hydrogen into the air tank. We managed to displace approximately, exactly 3.25 litres of diesel per kilogram of hydrogen consumed. We ran the trial for a measured period of over 821 hours. That's split between 4 machines. In reality, that's a month's worth of trial. We've scaled this up just so that we could have an idea in terms of what the actual impact would be across our fleets. And you can see the numbers there. You're beginning to build a bit of a picture in terms of what a retrofit solution looks like. Now, I don't think we're going to change the world with steps like this. But I picked up a point that Lewis made just at the end of his presentation, which is about making incremental steps. I think there is a perception in the UK market generally that we're waiting for this golden bullet. Apologies, somebody made that reference yesterday as well. I don't think we're going to get there if we wait for that golden bullet. I think we need to make small steps, small gains on sites to deliver some of those savings. I'm directly involved with a lot of bids and tenders at the moment. I've got a lot of commitments that our tier 1 clients are trying to achieve in terms of reducing their carbon. This and some of the technologies that you're all discussing in the room are going to be some of the ways that we're going to get there. I couldn't conclude a presentation without giving the operator perspective as well. This is really important. The number of projects that fail because operatives on site don't like it or it feels different are huge. I've been involved in conversations with digger drivers that have said if they can't see the black smoke coming out the excavator or the dozer, then it's not working hard enough. That's the industry that we work in, everybody. If our site operatives are giving feedback to decision makers on site from your technologies that they just don't like it, doesn't sound right, doesn't feel right, the vibrations are odd, then they're doomed to failure. You know, I look at Zeppelin and your wide range of products. You know, the number of decision makers that are looking at small tools and they either do or don't like battery because of misconceived ideas, I would imagine is a big problem in your business. The positives from my perspective was that there was minimal retraining. There are obviously some refueling parameters that we had to meet, but in essence, the operator had a half-hour briefing to explain what these great big tanks were on the back of his machine, explain how the refueling process went, and away they worked. They didn't notice any difference, any dropout in power, or any difference in sound. So that's important. A few other bits that you might be interested in. So, what did we pay? This is quite scary. So, just the labour involved and fitting the tanks onto the machine added approximately 20 to 30% over the base price of the machine. Now, I'll go a stage further, but I didn't put this in a slide because I didn't want you to hold me to it. The other issue is the depreciation value of those assets. So if we're buying tanks that are costing 20 to 30% of the original capex price, you'd hope that they'd hold some sort of value. I've yet to find anybody who wants to buy them off me. I've just been testing the market. So that technology has a zero value on my balance sheet. That's depreciated 100% in the trial period. What that effectively does is it doubles the rental price. So this is going back to what Lewis said around the importance of understanding the aftermarket. Who's going to buy this technology once we're finished with it? If that market that I referred to at the front end is consolidating, who's going to buy our second-hand fleet? If I want to sell a hydrogen excavator or any of the technology that we've spoken about over the next couple of days, and the US market is closed off to me, and Europe are a bit reluctant to take that machine from me, and Saudi is still running less efficient machinery, then I've got a real challenge with my depreciation value. That's going to affect my book value, which is going to affect my rental charges. That's the problem that's in the market at the moment with electrified plant. You'll remember, for those of you who were here last year, I gave a little bit of a sob story about my journey to electrification, my least utilised asset class, which depreciated at twice the amount that a diesel machine went. So these are real problems that we're going to have to understand. We need to understand the cost of the fuel. I believe this is on my next slide, so apologies if second point there. The hydrogen price, second point. This was the average price we paid for hydrogen during the course of the trial. My machines took 12 kilos. For those of you who can't be bothered to get your calculator out, that's approximately £700 worth of fuel per 2 days. That's in addition to the diesel. The commercial argument is difficult for me to make. My feelings resonate with you, Marcus. It's a tough one. So we need a continuity of supply, and we also need to have that price security. That continuity of supply is a good point. We only ran the trial for 31 recorded days. 8 of them, we failed to secure our hydrogen supply. It was diverted, it went somewhere else, it just wasn't available. Now that's not a good indictment for the UK hydrogen sector. If anyone's here and wants to argue the toss, by all means, but we couldn't get it on the days that we wanted it. Okay. So let's be a bit more positive. We've got plenty of barriers. I think my colleagues have been pretty clear in terms of what those are. I want to see government policy step in. I want to see government procurement have a higher weighting in tender scores to decarbonisation projects. I would like to see some sort of carbon weighting. If we are running diesel machines, then there should be some sort of penalty, be it financial or a scoring mechanism. I think any encouragement that we can have that clients can afford to pay a premium would be advantageous. I keep referring the plant hire market back to the car sector. The main reason in the UK that electric cars are quite so popular is because of the tax incentive for company car drivers. That's what's driven the new car sales. What can we do in the plant hire market in the UK to do something similar? Okay, lessons learned. Again, this is one from my story last year. I believe we need to challenge our business model. I don't think it's going to be good enough that I provide an alternatively fueled asset to site. I think companies like Plantforce and my peer group are going to need an end-to-end solution. It's an opportunity for us. We need to buy, secure, lease, hire purchase the assets out that is the infrastructure. It could be the technology that's provided from some of you in the room, but it's also the physical assets in terms of what that refueling looks like. We need to keep that operator buy-in. We need to make sure that the human beings are bought in on this journey. We can't let them throw stones. And finally, I think we need to accept that there are some bridge technologies out there. You know, we're not going to get to the end result in one foul swoop. So let's not let perfect get in the way of progress. In the next few years for Plantforce, I'm a little bit anxious over the next 5 years, if I'm honest. I think with the UK plant hire market the way it is, with the OEMs and the slow level of rollout of new technology, I think there are going to be certain targets at 2030 that are going to get missed. I don't think it's practical that some of my clients who have zero fuel objectives by 2030, I don't think they're going to be hit. But I'm a bit more positive as we reach out into the future. But it's going to take quite a lot of market consolidation to achieve that. I think hydrogen is going to be one of the fuels. I don't think it's going to be the fuel, but what I am insistent upon is we need a drop-in fuel solution. We are not going to be plugging in our large earthworks fleet in the middle of fields. That's not a thing. One note of caution is as well, I want to make sure we don't add risk to our sites. You know, I've heard of batteries being swapped. I think whilst I don't want to get in the way of technology and progress, it does make me very nervous that we're going to introduce an HGV or another asset close to a piece of plant and swap batteries over. So we need to be able to refuel, we need to be able to do it safely, we need to be able to do it quickly, and we need to be able to do it on site. It's very important. And then, yeah, my final point. I don't think we're waiting for hydrogen. I think it's here. I think it's more to do with how we deploy it and what assets that we put alongside it to support it. So Lewis, your bus stop analogy, I'm at the bus stop with you, pal, but I think I've already started walking slowly. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Chris. So yeah, another sobering message. Hopefully next year will be a little bit more positive, but hopefully we've got another government in the UK by then, but that's probably even more likely.